before the breakthrough, before the increase, before the light floods in. God removes. Not because you're being punished, not because you're forgotten, but because what's coming cannot survive the clutter of what was. This isn't loss, it's preparation. This isn't failure, it's filtering. And what feels like a setback is often the sound of heaven rearranging the battlefield. He's not asking for your comfort, he's demanding your courage. Because multiplication begins with surrender. And before he multiplies what's in your hands, he clears what's in your way. So if you've been stripped, if you've been emptied, if you've been brought to your knees, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. This is not the end, it is the making of you. Before the blessing comes the breaking. Before expansion, there's elimination. Before multiplication, there is removal. Not because you're being punished, but because you're being prepared. Because the version of you that asked for more isn't always the version of you that can carry it. And God, the universe, life itself, doesn't give growth to a vessel that's overflowing with ego noise and dependency. So when things start falling away, people, places, habits, income, distractions, don't curse the silence. Don't resist the release. You asked for transformation. You prayed for a new level. And this is what it looks like. It rarely comes in comfort. It never comes in convenience. It begins with subtraction, because multiplication without order is chaos. And God doesn't multiply disorder, He clears it. So if things are being taken from you, don't chase what's leaving. Ask, what space is being made? What burden is being lifted, even if it feels like loss? What version of me is being stripped, so the real one can rise, because this is how it always begins. The blessing doesn't start with arrival. It starts with removal. You don't put new wine in old wineskins. You don't pour potential into a mind that's chained by fear, addiction, or validation. So life starts breaking what you've been hiding behind. It unmasks your coping. It silences the noise. It isolates you not to punish you, but to introduce you to who you really are. The people you thought would stay forever gone. The plans you thought would unfold perfectly, disrupted. The path you clung to for security, wiped clean. Why? Because He loves you too much to let you settle for less. Because you said you wanted more, and now you're being made more. But first, what is not you must go. Let me be blunt. You can't step into purpose while dragging dead weight. You can't walk into abundance while serving old survival habits. You can't claim your calling while clinging to counterfeit comfort. And so, God removes, not to destroy, but to clear the stage, to make room, to align, to prepare the atmosphere for the weight of what's coming. But make no mistake, the in-between hurts. The wilderness always feels like rejection. But it's not rejection, it's redirection. It's refinement. It's recalibration. You don't get gold without fire. You don't build strength without resistance. You don't master faith in convenience, only in contradiction. So when everything starts unraveling, when the people you thought you needed disappear, when the doors slam shut in your face, ask yourself, am I being punished or positioned? Because every person in history that walked in greatness was first emptied. Moses was stripped of Egypt before he could part seas. Joseph was thrown in a pit before he sat in a palace. David fought a lion in the dark before he ever stood before Goliath. They were reduced before they were raised. And you're no different. So if you're in a season where nothing makes sense, where it feels like you're losing everything, where isolation has become your only companion, look again. Maybe you're not being abandoned. Maybe you're being anointed. Maybe this silence isn't emptiness, it's strategy. Maybe this quiet isn't punishment, it's preparation. Maybe God is clearing the room, so when the blessing shows up, there's no confusion about where it came from. So don't resist the removal. Don't chase what's being taken. And whatever you do, don't rebuild what he's trying to tear down. You cannot build the future with materials from your past. You can't multiply with a mind that's still surviving. And you can't rise with hands full of what you refuse to release. This is the moment to trust the process. Not with blind hope, but with disciplined faith. Faith that understands this principle: God removes before he multiplies. And the longer you hold on to what's expired, the longer you delay what's divine. So strip it. Let it go. Grieve if you must, but don't go back. Don't cling to what's already collapsing. Don't mourn a door that was never meant to carry your purpose through it, because the blessing ahead of you demands a lighter version of you. And when the time comes, when the doors open, when the weight of what you prayed for finally arrives, you'll realize it didn't come because you were lucky. It came because you were willing to be emptied, willing to release, willing to lose, so that you could receive. You asked for elevation, but you forgot what elevation demands. You forgot that, to rise, you must release. You forgot that the higher you go, the less you can carry. Airplanes don't ascend with overloaded cargo. Balloons don't rise without dropping the weights, and neither will you. So when life starts pulling things from your grip, understand this. What looks like loss is often leverage. What feels like destruction is often direction. And what seems like death is often the beginning of rebirth. But most people don't make it to the blessing because they resist the breaking. They try to take everything with them. Old habits, old identities, old fears dressed in logic. They try to negotiate with destiny, keep the comfort and get the calling too. But listen closely. Destiny doesn't deal in compromise. It demands all of you. Not the cleaned-up version, not the people-pleasing shell, not the Instagram persona. It wants what's real, raw, unfiltered, surrendered. And until you're willing to become that, you'll delay what's meant for you. This is why so many stay stuck, not because they lack opportunity, but because they refuse to let go. They confuse pruning with punishment. They see closed doors as rejection instead of redirection. But if you could see what was on the other side of your release, you'd let go faster. You'd stop trying to fix what God already labeled finished. You'd stop calling it faith while building safety nets out of fear. See, there's a difference between being in control and being in command. Control clutches. It micromanages. It fears change. But command flows with alignment. Command trusts the unseen. Command knows that the storm may strip the branches, but it never touches the roots. You are not losing your life. You are losing what's in the way of your life. You are not being forgotten. You are being forged. Because here's what they don't tell you about multiplication. It doesn't come through strategy alone. It comes through alignment. And alignment requires surrender. Not laziness, not apathy, but radical disciplined surrender. The kind where you stop pretending you're in charge of timing. The kind where you stop worshiping what the world says you should chase. The kind where you step out even when the path disappears beneath your feet. That's what the greats knew. Carnegie surrendered before he scaled. Lincoln failed repeatedly before he led. Disney lost everything, including his name, before he built a kingdom. They all went through removal before they ever saw reward. But here's the difference. They didn't waste their wilderness. They used it. They studied themselves. They developed new disciplines. They rewired old beliefs. They got honest, painfully honest, because self-deception is the most expensive illusion you can carry into your next level. You can't pray for abundance while thinking like a beggar. You can't step into leadership while still craving permission. You can't demand peace while feeding chaos with your habits. So yes, God will remove, but only so He can rebuild. And the rebuilding isn't just external, It's internal, it's mental, it's spiritual. This is the part no one claps for. The season where nobody sees you. No stage, no spotlight. Just silence, and stillness, and surrender. And this is where most walk away, because silence feels like insignificance, stillness feels like stagnation, and surrender feels like defeat. But listen carefully. Silence is not insignificance, it's strategy. Stillness is not stagnation, it's foundation. And surrender is not defeat, it's authority. Because when you no longer fear losing what's not aligned, you become dangerous. You become the kind of person who doesn't beg. You build. You don't chase. You attract. You don't cling to what leaves. You rise from what remains. Because now you know you're not just going through a trial. You're going through training. And when God removes, He's not taking from you. He's teaching you. Teaching you that your worth isn't in what you lost. Teaching you that your future isn't built by fear. Teaching you that the real miracle is not what you gain, but who you become on the way there. So the question isn't, why is this happening to me? The question is, who am I becoming because of it? Because if you knew what was coming, if you saw the doors being carved behind the scenes, if you glimpsed the magnitude of the multiplication, you'd let it all fall. You'd let it all burn. You'd say goodbye without fear. You'd trust the silence. You'd walk away from the crowd. You'd stop clinging to what's crumbling and start preparing for what's coming. Because it's coming. But only if you make room. Only if you release the old script. Only if you walk through this wilderness with open hands. The lesson is never in what was taken. It's in what's left behind. Because if you're still breathing, if you still have fight in your chest and fire in your bones, then God didn't remove to break you. He removed to build something that wouldn't break. Let the old collapse. Let the comfort rot. Let the shallow roots be torn up from the soil, because you were never made to live a surface-level life. See, most people want multiplication without sacrifice. They want blessings without bleeding. They want the next level, but they refuse to let go of level 1 thinking. They want legacy, but they can't let go of likes. They want impact, but they won't give up comfort. They want truth, but they can't stop entertaining the lie. You can't become unstoppable while clinging to what makes you feel safe. You can't step into purpose while still living to please people who fear their own potential. You weren't designed to walk on eggshells. You were born to walk through fire. And fire, my friend, doesn't just destroy, it purifies. When a sword is made, it's not created in silence or safety. It's formed in heat, shaped through blows, and sharpened through resistance. God doesn't multiply mediocrity. He multiplies what's forged in fire. So stop resisting your refinement. Stop calling it the devil when it's your discipline being trained. Stop blaming the world when it's your will being summoned. There is gold in you, but it must be refined. There is strength in you, but it must be tested. There is calling in you, but it must be chosen. Every single day. Let's tell the truth most avoid. Self-mastery doesn't come wrapped in motivation. It comes wrapped in mundane repetition. In the quiet commitment no one claps for. In the discipline you choose when the excitement dies. It's easy to act brave on a stage. It's easy to post the quote, share the mantra, tell the world you're healing. But when the lights go off, when the room is empty, when it's just you, your demons, and a decision, that's when the real transformation is decided. You want breakthrough. Start with obedience in the dark. You want power. Start by mastering your emotions before they master you. Because the multiplication you seek, it's not out there. It begins with dominion in here. And make no mistake, the moment you decide to rise, everything unaligned will begin to fall. Don't mistake that for failure. It's proof. Proof that you're shifting. proof that you're shedding, proof that the old life no longer fits the new mind. When a snake grows, it sheds its skin. When a seed grows, it cracks open. When an eagle matures, it flies alone. Growth always begins with a breaking. So when things start falling away, people, habits, patterns, distractions, bless it. Say thank you. Say goodbye. Because the God who removes is the same God who multiplies. But He will not multiply what keeps you bound. He will not bless your refusal to let go. He will not elevate what you're still using to avoid responsibility. This is war, and the battlefield is not your circumstances. It's not the economy. It's not the algorithm. It's not the people who left. The battlefield is your mind, your habits, your standards. That's why Napoleon Hill said, "If you do not conquer self, you will be conquered by self." And that is the real test. Because the removal is easy. It happens to you. But the mastery, that's a choice you must make again and again and again. Even when you're tired. Even when it hurts. Even when nothing makes sense yet. Especially then. You were never promised comfort. You were promised greatness. And greatness doesn't come in straight lines. It doesn't show up in perfect timing. It doesn't arrive when you feel ready. It comes after the wilderness, after the quiet, after the world thinks you've been buried when really you've just been planted. Because when God removes, He's preparing the soil. And when He multiplies, it's never small. But only those who endure the removal get to carry the reward. Only those who obey when it's inconvenient get to hold what others will never touch. And only those who lose the version of themselves they were never meant to be will become who they actually are. You've been asking for elevation. You've been praying for clarity. You've been crying out for a breakthrough. But here's the uncomfortable truth. You don't rise by adding more. You rise by subtracting what no longer aligns with who you're becoming. Because multiplication doesn't begin with excess. It begins with elimination. Clearing. Pruning. Look at nature. Look at the harvest. Every season of abundance was preceded by a season of release. The tree sheds its leaves. The farmer tills the land. The caterpillar disappears before it becomes anything worth marveling at. God hides His miracles in the moments you think nothing is happening. He covers greatness in discomfort, conceals purpose in obscurity, and waits to reveal power until you've proven you can carry it with integrity. Because what good is success if you still think like a slave? What good is multiplication if your identity is still tied to scarcity? What good is a platform if your character collapses beneath the weight? You don't need more followers. You need more discipline. You don't need a louder voice. You need a sharper mind. You don't need more opportunities. You need the courage to walk through the doors that are already cracked open. But hear me, you can't walk through new doors while still carrying the baggage of your old excuses. That's why He removed it. That's why it had to break. That's why it couldn't go with you, because it would have poisoned the promise, corrupted the vision, stalled the multiplication. You see, before David became king, he was sent to the field. Before Joseph ruled in Egypt, he was thrown in a pit. Before Moses parted the Red Sea, he spent 40 years in a desert wondering if he'd missed his moment. But they weren't being punished, they were being prepared. Because no leader is born on the mountaintop. They're carved out in caves. They're refined in silence. They're multiplied only after the stripping, the surrender, the submission. And so are you. Look at what's been taken. Look at who walked away. Look at what fell apart, and then ask yourself this: was it really loss, or was it alignment? Was it punishment, or was it positioning? You've been praying for peace, but still holding on to what breeds chaos. You've been asking for more, but refusing to be faithful with what you have. You've been begging for purpose while dancing with distractions that keep you numb and nice and quiet. That's why He shook the ground. That's why it crumbled. That's why it collapsed. Not to punish you, to free you. Because purpose doesn't bloom in shallow soil. It digs deep. It roots itself in values, in vision, in voluntary sacrifice. And if you won't lay it down willingly, He'll take it. Not because He's cruel, because He loves you too much to let you settle. He removes the thing you think you need to show you what you truly carry. He takes away the familiar to force your faith into motion. He interrupts your patterns so you can finally wake up from the sleepwalking. You were never called to play small. You were never built for mediocrity. You were never created to blend in with comfort, to fold under pressure, to shrink in the face of resistance. You're not fragile. You're not forgotten. And you're not finished. This isn't where it ends. This is where multiplication begins. But only if you decide to rise. Only if you let go of what you were never meant to carry. Only if you stop praying for harvest while refusing to sow with discipline. Let it go. Let the old version of you die. Let the former mindset be buried. Let the fear be silenced. Let the comfort be crucified. Because the world doesn't change when you feel good. It changes when you get honest. When you finally say, I'm done shrinking. I'm done waiting. I'm done trying to negotiate with average. You were removed from who you used to be so you could become who you were always meant to be. So now the question is no longer, why did this happen? The question is, what will I do now that it did? Will you bury your head in regret, or will you build something unshakable from the rubble? Will you collapse in fear, or will you rise with a fire that hell itself can't quench? Because the removal was just the beginning. The multiplication starts now. You've been wondering why it all had to fall apart, why the people you trusted turned away, why the door you prayed for was slammed shut, why your timeline shattered, why the season shifted before you were ready. But what if I told you, God was never trying to ruin your life. He was trying to reveal it. Reveal the truth behind the illusion. Reveal the strength beneath your surface. Reveal the calling that was always there but buried, under noise, under fear, under who you thought you had to be. You see, before God multiplies your influence, He multiplies your identity. And that doesn't happen in the spotlight. It happens in silence, in obscurity, in the midnight hour where no one claps, no one watches, and no one validates. That's where you decide. That's where you decide who you're going to be when the stage is empty, and the applause fades, and the harvest still hasn't come. Because God isn't preparing you for popularity. He's preparing you for power. And real power doesn't start with what you gain. It starts with what you lose. You lose your ego. You lose your comfort. You lose your need to be liked. You lose your desire to be understood by those who were never called to your future. You become dangerous when you no longer require approval to walk in purpose. When obedience matters more than optics. When legacy matters more than likes. That's when the shift happens. That's when God says, now you're ready. Now you're ready to carry the blessing without being owned by it. Now you're ready to influence without being intoxicated by applause. Now you're ready to receive more without being ruled by more. But He couldn't give you that while you were still clutching everything that contradicts it. So He removed it. He allowed it to be stripped. He permitted the breaking not to harm you but to hollow you out, so He could fill you with something better. Some of you are trying to multiply a life you haven't even surrendered. You're trying to win the war while still sleeping with your fears. You're asking for miracles, but still addicted to mediocrity. You want your next level, but you won't release your last one. So here's the unfiltered truth. If God has removed it, don't chase it. If He's ended it, don't resurrect it. If He's pruned it, don't try to tape the branch back on. Let Him finish the surgery. Let Him complete the refining. Let Him multiply in His timing, not yours. Because what's coming is not just a better version of what you lost. It's a completely different dimension, a new realm, a divine level you couldn't have built with your old blueprints. And if you're in the waiting, don't waste it. Train, prepare, build in the silence like your future depends on it, because it does. Study while no one sees you. Sow seeds when the ground looks dry. Pray like the doors are already open. Speak like the vision is already alive. Move like it's already multiplying, because in the kingdom, faith precedes manifestation. The enemy wants you to think this is the end, that the removal was a rejection, that the pain was a punishment, that the silence was proof that you were forgotten. But he's wrong, because God doesn't prune what He's discarding. He only prunes what He's preparing to grow. You are still anointed. You are still called. You are still necessary. But now you're lighter. You're clearer. You're free. And that is what makes you ready. Because when God removes, it's never subtraction. It's setup. It's strategy. It's divine mathematics that human minds can't comprehend. He removes to make room. He removes to sharpen your edge. He removes to multiply your impact. And if you trust Him with the removal, He will trust you with the revival. Do you feel that tug in your soul? That quiet, wordless knowing that something sacred is being built in the shadows? That while your hands are empty, your future is being filled? That while you're mourning what left, heaven is preparing what's next? That is not imagination. That is not delusion. That is alignment. Because when God begins to remove, He doesn't consult your comfort. He responds to your calling. He doesn't ask if you're ready. He starts cutting. And every loss you cried over, every door that closed, every person who disappeared wasn't just an accident. It was surgery, necessary, painful, precise, because He knew what you didn't. He saw the pride that would have poisoned your platform. He saw the distractions that would have delayed your destiny. He saw the people you trusted would have shattered your soul the moment you stepped into the light. So He didn't ask for your permission. He rescued you from what you thought you needed. That's what love looks like when you pray for elevation. And maybe no one saw the tears. Maybe you kept going while everything you knew was falling apart. Maybe you smiled while the ground crumbled beneath your feet. Maybe you've walked through seasons that would have broken most people, but you didn't break. You bent, you bowed, but you didn't break. Because something inside you refused to let go of the vision. Something louder than fear. Something stronger than failure. Call it grit. Call it God. Call it destiny, pulsing in your chest like a drumbeat you couldn't silence. And now, you're still here. You're wiser. You're leaner. You're forged. You're focused. You don't want what you used to want. You don't crave what used to distract you. You're no longer interested in impressing people who never mattered. Why? Because you met the fire and you didn't run. You stood in it. You let it purify. You let it burn the version of you that couldn't carry the weight of your next level. And here's what most never understand. God doesn't multiply the comfortable. He multiplies the committed. He doesn't elevate the lukewarm. He calls the relentless, the tried, the tested, the firewalkers, the ones who let go before the blessing arrived, who obeyed without proof, who stayed faithful in famine, who kept building when nothing made sense. That's who He multiplies. And when the time comes, when the page turns, when the wind shifts and the harvest rises out of dry ground, you won't be surprised. Because you didn't just believe it was coming. You became the kind of person who could handle it. That's the secret. Multiplication doesn't come when you ask. It comes when you're ready to carry it without being crushed by it. So if you're still waiting, don't grow bitter. Don't start doubting. Don't curse the pruning. Thank God for it. Because if He removed it, it was never your foundation. If He stripped it, it was never your strength. If He shattered it, it was never built to last. What He's preparing, what He's building, what He's about to release, it required a version of you that couldn't be distracted, couldn't be seduced by mediocrity, couldn't be swayed by every opinion in the crowd. This next season isn't just about addition, it's about assignment. It's not about more noise, it's about more impact. It's not about feeling powerful, it's about being trusted with power. So don't panic when the old things fall away. Don't beg for what's been buried. Don't resurrect what He crucified. Because God only multiplies what's aligned, and He only aligns what's fully surrendered. Let the things that need to die, die. Let the doors that closed stay closed. Let the old you rest in peace. Because what's coming will not just bless you, it will require you. And you're ready. You're not empty, you're prepared. You're not forgotten, you're being positioned. You're not being punished, you're being trusted. God removes before He multiplies, and your season of subtraction is only the prelude to supernatural overflow. There comes a moment when you stop asking, "Why me?" and start declaring, "Try me." A moment when the pain that used to paralyze you now fuels you. When what you thought broke you actually built you. When you realize God didn't subtract to punish you. He subtracted to strip you of the unnecessary. He didn't take it to torment you. He took it because what's coming will suffocate in clutter. It will die in distraction. It will never survive in shallow soil. So He made room. And when you finally understand that, you stop begging for what left. You stop trying to tape together what God deliberately tore apart. You stop asking dead things to breathe again. Because multiplication doesn't show up in noise. It shows up in clarity, in obedience, in stillness that listens, in movement that no longer requires applause. You are being formed for weight, for spiritual weight, emotional weight, leadership weight, influence weight, and the version of you that got stripped bare was the only version that could be trusted with it. He removed what was shallow, so He could multiply what was solid. So you want to rise, let Him finish the cutting. Let Him take what needs to be buried. Let Him remove your idols, the comfort, the image, the illusion of control. Because He can't multiply your purpose until He first subtracts your ego. He can't multiply your influence until He breaks your obsession with validation. He can't multiply your next level while you're still addicted to the voices from your last one. This is sacred math. This is divine accounting, and it never adds up to the world because it's not for the world. So if you're walking through a season where everything seems to be taken from you, your friends, your confidence, your finances, your plan, your peace, don't fall into despair. Fall into alignment, because if He's removing, He's multiplying, but only when you release. You don't have time to cling to what's already gone. You don't have time to rehearse what broke you. You don't have time to keep nursing what's not coming back. There is too much in you to waste another year begging for less than what God has planned. You've come too far. You've been broken too deep. You've healed through too much to let this chapter end in silence. Stand. Walk like it's already multiplied. Speak like the promise is already here. Move like the chains have already shattered. Because faith is not a feeling. It's not a mood. It's not a warm Ida you keep in your journal. Faith is movement. Faith is action. Faith is trusting subtraction when you have no visible sign of what's coming next. And when the harvest arrives, when the doors swing open, when the vision finally manifests in front of your face, you'll know it was never withheld. It was always protected. It was never lost. It was preserved for the version of you that chose to trust in the dark. So bless the closed doors. Honor the losses. Thank the betrayals. Celebrate the lonely nights, because they were holy ground in disguise. And they were never meant to destroy you, they were meant to train you. So when God multiplies, you won't sabotage it. You'll steward it. You'll carry it. You'll protect it. And one day when someone asks you how you did it, how you survived, how you stayed sane, how you made it through the fire, you'll smile not with pride, but with reverence. And you'll say, He removed, so I could receive. He broke, so I could build. He emptied, so I could finally be filled. Because God always removes before He multiplies. The version of you on the other side of this season won't be softer, won't be smaller, won't be less. You'll be sharper, stronger, stripped of the unnecessary and overflowing with divine weight. Because what God removes, He replaces with power. So move forward with clean hands, clear eyes, and an untouchable faith. Not because it's easy, but because He's still writing, and this chapter is not your last. And if this message pierced something in your soul, don't keep it to yourself. Let someone else know the removal is not rejection. It's refinement. Drop a comment. Share this with someone who's being rebuilt in silence. Like it, so it finds the next warrior who's almost ready to give up. Because we rise together. God removes before He multiplies, but when He multiplies, everything changes.